طيب. We'll try to do something interesting today. We'll see if it works or not. هنشوف اللي هنمشي ازاي. So you guys are doing a series on things that Jesus did not say. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah?
Which means
You
what
guys seem
exactly?
like, huh? What?
Well, which means what exactly is it that...
Like things Jesus did not say, like things that were
What's not
misinterpreted.
written in the Bible, you mean, or...
No, just like things that we sometimes do as Christians or we say, but it's not actually what Jesus said. So this is kind of a series, and I think it's from Abuna Anthony Msiha from Washington, D.C. He has a, like, I think he has a similar series, which... Right. So today the thing I want to talk to you about, the one thing that we sometimes think as Christians, but it's not necessarily true, and sometimes we feel because, you know, we are getting closer to Christ, this should be a given. I'm going to say what this is, but it's not necessarily true. And the claim is, if I become closer to Christ, life becomes easier or better. So this is something that Jesus did not say. So today I will give you an illustration. It's a very brief illustration. I want to tell you a story. And I will tell you the story from this illustration on this table. And I'll play some videos. Yeah, we'll make it more dynamic. Okay? So jump in if you have any comments or anything, any thoughts, just jump in. So when I was starting to prepare this topic, it started off answering that question. Is it true, or why is it not true that when you become closer to Christ, your life does not necessarily get easier? Why? Why does it have to get harder? And what did Christ say about it? So once I started preparing the topic, it kind of took a life on its own, and this whole thing came about. So we're going to answer that question, but we're also going to talk about a bunch of other things at the same time. Like, imagine with me that every one of you is this bottle. Okay? Every single one of you is a Play-Doh. There's Play-Doh inside, but the Play-Doh is in a container, and that's you. You can be the blue one. Who has the blue one? And you guys can claim, Anna, I took the green, وكتبت عليها اسمي, just to claim it, عشان ما حدش يقول لي بتاعتي.
And where the rest?
And whatever. So we're all Play-Dohs in bottles. And the way you think about it is the Play-Doh inside that you can't see necessarily, like you can't see it because it's covered, but the Play-Doh inside, you can think of it as your true self, who you really are. And so this is really who you are. And the bottle, the container on the outside, think of it as your ego, or what you present to the people. Every one of us has these two things. We have something that is true about ourselves, and we have something that protects us from all kinds of vulnerabilities. And if I ask you guys, who are you? What are you guys going to answer? Like if I ask you just a very general question, who are you? You're going to say your name. What else are you going to say? Your age. What else are you going to say? Education. Occupation.
Yeah, but
Which in your case?
Yeah.
What else are you going to say when I ask you who are you? Your nationality. Religion. Family. Friends. All of this is writing that you present to the people. This is what the people see. The people see the container. Okay? They don't see what's inside the container because we don't expose what's inside the container most of the time. Most of the time we're just trying to show this image that we put in front of people. And we try to make it as good as possible. We try to present the best image of ourselves. Whether we are in church, whether we are in the world, we always try to present our best image. And we tend, because we want to preserve this image very much, we care about it so much, it's hard, it does not change, and your ego is attached to that image. Who you are is related to what's written on that cover. So think of us all as bottles or like containers that have Play-Doh inside, your true self is inside, and your containers, and this is Christ. A lot of us come to church and we deal with Christ like this. We are all people with egos, and we all come to church to worship God. Okay? Our true self is still within our ego. Who you really are is still inside your ego. And you come to church and you pray to God. And you serve God. And you do all the kind of the church activities that you do. Whatever it is. You're very much into the church. And there seems to be a problem. What is the problem in this situation that I just set up? Is there a problem in this? Well, do you guys not see a problem in this?
Well, I think eventually, like, when you're in your own closed door room, you should expose what's inside your gut. I understand that, you know, we have a bit of a look from the front, a dentist, married, 2 kids, I don't know what, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But when you're in your quiet time with God, you have to pray from your heart, you have to reveal your truth.
Yes, 100%. Anyone has anything else to add to what I said?
I guess you don't change, like you stay the same like you said, but if you open, maybe the Play-Doh will change into other shapes, or you become the image of Christ.
Yes.
So you'll change if you open.
Yes. Yes. That's absolutely correct. So because a lot of us, and you know, a lot of us get stuck in this stage. If you think of the spiritual life as a journey, if you think of your relationship with Christ as a journey, a lot of us are actually stuck in the stage where we come to church and Christ is outside of us. We look at him as something that is outside. We come, we do our service, whatever, but he's outside. We are inside our little egos, and we just come and deal with him as something from the outside. So, now, what is the problem with that in terms of other people? And let me just, I'm going to mention a few verses here. This situation happened before, and the people who did this, for you guys who just came, I'm going to mention it very, very briefly. قرب شوية. Just come a bit closer. We're going to talk about a series of things Christ or Jesus did not say, and we're going to talk about things that Jesus did not say is, when you come to me, life is going to become easier, life is going to become better. When you come closer to God, life becomes easier and better. That's not what Christ said. And we said that every single one of us is a Play-Doh. The Play-Doh is inside, and this is our true self. And on the outside, we have our egos that protect us, and we have on the container, which is our ego, we have all kinds of titles that we write. Your name, your age, what you like, what you don't like, who your friends are, etc., etc. And you present this cover in front of everyone, and everyone sees the cover, but not everyone sees what's inside. This situation happened in the New Testament, when the Pharisees, Christ clashed with a group of people most of the time, and they were the Pharisees and the scribes. Most of the time he would clash with them. Why? Because this was the scenario. These were the Pharisees. They were egos. God to them was just to satisfy their ego at the end of the day. And Christ says about them, he says, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far away from me. Now, we also are in this stage most of the time. As we go in the story, you'll see how we should progress. And because we are in this stage, some of us actually go a step further. Some of us, so I'll take Balash one. This is me. And it is very important when I'm in church to show this container. It's very important. Not only is it important to show this container, but it's important to show that I am a good Christian. That I do all the right things, I say all the right things, I'm doing all the actions. But I'm still protected with my ego. And you know how I know that? You know how I know that? Because every time another ego clashes with mine, I get upset. This is why there's a lot of conflict in the church. It's because your ego has just hit my ego. And when you hit my ego, you don't change and I don't change. The container still stays the same shape. You can hit it as much as you want. Nothing changes. So then we end up being upset with each other. And you know that in any service that you do, once you see conflict, you know that you're still in that container. You still have not gotten out of that container yet. And you'll see what needs to be done. And Christ said about this something very interesting. In Revelation, Christ says, because you say I am rich, I say I am rich, have become wealthy and have need for nothing, and you don't know that you are wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. Because what you're showing to the people is not what's inside. Why do we stay in this container even though we know it's wrong? Why do you think? Why do we always stay in that container, even though we know that this is not the right Christian thing to do? Why don't we open the container and show and expose the Play-Doh?
You know, sometimes people don't accept.
Not necessarily to people. In relationship to Christ.
Oh no, you have to.
Hey. So why do you guys think? Why don't we get out? Because it's your comfort zone. Because it's your safety. Because you can't show your vulnerabilities to Christ. Because change is difficult. It's very hard. Change is very hard. And if you want to give yourself, your true self as a sacrifice to Christ, it's going to be very painful to open this container. So that's why a lot of us stay in the container. Because it's easy, it's safe, and I know it. Time.
It says Play-Doh on the outside. Like
Yeah.
it says it written. I'm a Christian.
A lot of us, you don't see it. Yeah, exactly. And if you stay in your Play-Doh, if you stay in your container, and you come to Christ, and you want to have an actual experience with Christ, if I push this container on Christ, what happens? Does anything change? The picture doesn't, well, does this in any way change?
No,
Nothing.
you
Nothing
want it to
changed.
mold you and change you and make you something.
Exactly. So, not only are you clashing with others because you cannot change or adapt, you cannot conform to Christ. You just have the image, like Abuna said, I like that. You have the image of a Christian. It's written that you're a Play-Doh. A good example from the New Testament of someone who had that problem was the rich man who came to Christ. The rich man had good intentions. Christ told him, do this, do this, do this. He said, I did this since I was a kid. He said, fine, go sell everything that you want and come follow me. Basically what Christ was saying is, on your container it says rich. Yeah, get rid of that. But no, can't get rid of rich. It's very important to who I am. It's important to the face that I'm showing to other people. I can't get rid of it. Type. I want to show you a video. Because we are all on those containers, not only do we clash within the church, not only we cannot conform to Christ, but we repel people from outside. People who look at us as Christians and they see this, they're repelled by it. Let me show you an example of someone. I don't know what the speakers are, but I think you already all know him, but not the cats. I want you to hear, do you all know who Father Lazarus Antoni is? Who does not know who Father Lazarus Antoni is? Raise your hand.
I'm not sure if I...
Okay, so I'll give you a brief... Okay, Father Lazarus Antoni is actually your homeboy. He's an Australian. He was a philosopher. He was an avid atheist. He was a socialist. These are... Everything I'm telling you is what's written on his container. He was a socialist, he was an atheist, he was a philosopher, very intelligent man. And he was an atheist because of the reasons he's going to mention. Okay? I want you to listen to what he says. Why did he refuse to be Christian? When he was still young. This is what he says. Which highlight?
Ready to pair.
مش مشكلة. شغالة من هنا وخلاص. Can you guys see? I think you guys can.
No, Dubai.
Huh?
It's usually Dubai. Yeah. Just get it.
Okay, so Father Antoni is an interesting story because he was an atheist who converted to Christianity, but he also came to the Coptic Church specifically. Even though the guy's Australian, I'm like, what were you thinking? But see, it's interesting to see someone who's like completely different from us join the Coptic Church, and he says why he did. He's a fantastic guy. He has a lot of videos. If you have a bit of free time on your hands, go watch all his videos. They're fantastic. Like I love him. Like it just shows you how Christ comes to everyone. He approaches everyone. Like there's no one that is hard for Christ.
There was a purpose and an origin from life, but I did not contribute it.
All right, so I want you guys to listen carefully to why Father Lazarus, when he was young, refused to become a Christian. And it's because of this situation we have here.
After death, I didn't believe in it. I came to regard religion as hypocrisy. I found that I must take the answers from those who were born before me. Father Lazarus, I live in the mountain of St. Anthony, in the Red Sea area. I have been here since 1996. I was 1 year in the monastery, or nearly 1 year, and then I came to the mountain. I welcome all the viewers on CYC, on the Coptic Youth channel, and I want to explain why and how our generous Lord God brought me to this place. Because this is the inheritance of the Coptic mysticism from Antonius, the father of the monks. I was born of Protestant parents. My father especially was a strong Protestant, Methodist. Methodists were dissenting Protestants, not belonging to the mainstream. My mother was much more sympathetic to Roman Catholic Church, but myself and my brothers and sisters, we grew up in that family. As I grew up, I found that some people were good people and most people were not good people. So I understood that religion doesn't make a lot of difference. Many people went to church and they were bad people. They cheated on each other, they did wrong things, they spoke badly, they swore, they lived wild lives, but they went to church. They said they were believers. I saw other people who never went to church, who were kind and generous and gave of love. So I had no way in my experience to connect faith in a religion with personal behavior. And this to me made it seem hollow. If I want to go to a church for the sake of the name, okay. But for the sake of love, for the sake of truth, I didn't find it in my experience. So this is why I came to regard religion as hypocrisy. Then my reading reinforced this. The two great influences on my early thought.
Then he talks about how he reads Karl Marx and Freud and all this stuff. But you see what he said? What repelled him from church is that people had the image of Christians, but their behavior did not reflect it. And that is because every single one, not every single one, I shouldn't say that, but there was a lot of us, including myself, that are still stuck in their egos, and we don't reflect Christ. Let's move on with the journey. So what do we need to do? The first thing you need to do is you need to acknowledge and tell God, God, I need to change.
For those who are think you just down the container.
Oh, sorry. So we're basically, in a nutshell, what we have is a bunch of Play-Doh containers. And the Play-Doh inside is your true self, who you really are. And the cover, this bottle, is the cover that you show others. This is your ego that you use to protect yourself, and you have all kinds of titles on it, your name, your age, what you do. Everything that you project to other people is written on the container. And the problem is, we went through a bunch of points, I don't want to repeat them again, but the problem is when we keep the Play-Doh inside and we stay within our ego to protect ourselves, and we come to the church and we come to Christ as individuals who are in containers, this is not a good situation because it causes a lot of issues. We talked about one of the issues is we cannot conform to Christ. If I keep pushing this on Christ, nothing changes. We cannot conform with each other because we each have our own egos that has its own shape and we cannot talk to each other, so we get into a lot of conflict. And we repel people who come from outside. Just like Father Lazarus said. People come to church having the name of Christians but not conform to Christ, so they repel other people. So, let's go with the journey. St. Paul had one of those moments where Christ appeared to him and his life changed 180 degrees. But not every one of us has this 180 degrees change in their life. Not everyone Christ appears to, not everyone a saint appears to. Sometimes by progressive, slow, hard work, we ask Christ, I need to come out of my ego. And this is the most painful process you can go through. The more you want to get closer to Christ, He will crush your ego. And I personally experienced that. Your ego is going to be crushed. If you want to truly come out of this box, it's going to be a very painful process. It's going to take a lot of effort to open up and to take out the Play-Doh. And it's not easy. I remember I was talking to someone recently. It's funny because we were talking about the same topic and like about ego and I was telling that person, I was telling him, I think this is, I'm in that stage where I'm getting my ego crushed as I grow. So it's just, it's really tough, but once you get out, Allah will show you what happens. Sorry, let me go back to that. When you're here, when you're at the stage where your ego is you're still inside your ego, the devil is happy with you. There's no reason for the devil to kind of mess with you. He's actually happy that you go to church. If you're still there in the container, he actually encourages. Let me read to you something. Who read Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis? Does anyone know what Screwtape Letters is? Does anyone know who C.S. Lewis is? Okay, good.
Well, okay, I've heard of it.
So, Screwtape Letters is actually a very funny kind of conversation between an uncle, devil, so he's a big devil, and he's talking to his nephew, devil. Like he's a small devil who's still under practice. So the small devil doesn't know what to do with the guy he's trying to trick. But he writes to his uncle, say, hey uncle, like I don't know what to do. His uncle says, oh, you should do this, you should do that. But basically it's a small devil talking to his uncle about how to get this man to fall or sin or whatever. So I want to read to you one kind of interaction that they had. And I thought it was hilarious because it follows this theme exactly. So this is the uncle writing to his nephew, okay? He says, his name is Wormwood. Wormwood is the name of the nephew. He says, Dear Wormwood, I note with grave displeasure, and he's so upset, that your patient, he calls the guy patient, the guy that he's trying to trick, has become a Christian. Do not indulge the hope that you will escape the usual penalties. There's no need to despair. Hundreds of these adults converts have been reclaimed after a brief sojourn in the enemy's camp and are now with us. فالشيطان لما بيتكلم على ربنا هنا بيكلمه my enemy. يعني بيتكلم على ربنا as my enemy. فبيقول ما تقلقش. There was a lot of times, a lot of adults converted to Christianity, but it's okay. They spend a bit of time and then they come back to us. So don't stress too much that he became a Christian. One of our great allies at present is the church itself. يعني الشيطان بيقول للشيطان الصغير, one of our best weapons that we have is the actual church. خليه يروح الكنيسة. That's good. Do not misunderstand me. I do not mean the church as we see her spread out through all time and space and rooted in eternity. بيتكلم على the spiritual church طبعا. I'm going to skip a few parts. All your patient sees is the half-finished sham Gothic erection, the building, the church. When he goes inside, he sees the local grocer واحد بيشتغل في الكنيسة with rather an oily expression on his face, bustling up to offer him one shiny little book containing a liturgy which he cannot understand, which neither of them can understand, and one shabby little book containing corrupt texts of non-religion. He goes on to say, أنا مش عايز أقرأ كل عشان ما not basically بيقول له إيه؟ بيقول له خلينا نروح الكنيسة. if anything, there's more chance in he comes back to us بعد ما يروح الكنيسة. ليه؟ لأن once إنه راح الكنيسة, he's gonna start judging others. Let him focus on other people. Don't let him focus on Christ or praying or whatever. He went to church, good for you. Go to church. But let his eyes focus on the other people. I don't like الراجل ده صوته وحش. مش عارف لابس كده ليه الراجل ده مش في القرن ال 21. And I kid you not, this is true. I have been told things like I have done during liturgies that I didn't know anyone was looking at me while anyways. And I do the same thing. Like a lot of times I daydream and I'm starting to watch people in church. We all do that. فهنا the devil is saying, خليه يروح الكنيسة. That's no problem. We'll make him fall much easier than if he was outside church. No problem. What I'm trying to say here is, when you are inside your box, the devil is happy. Even if you go to church, he's happy. He has no worries. Once you ask Christ that you want to come out, and you want to have a relationship with Christ that is true, that is personal, you start coming out of your ego. And I'm going to repeat this because it's true. It's a very painful process. And a lot of people, once they start coming out of their ego and see how painful it is, they would rather go back inside. They don't want to go out. And a lot of us, it's a dynamic process. It's not a one-time shot where you come out all of a sudden. No. You come out little by little. This is who you truly are. Comes out little by little. Sometimes it gets too much, you go back in. This is too hard. I can't come out. You have to keep pushing to get out, but there's something even more interesting. We're going to talk about that. So you start coming out. And what's going to happen? I'm going to take only part of it. Let's assume you came out of your ego. Once you come out of your ego, what is this? It's flexible. This is what Christ wants. Something that is flexible, that he can shape. This cannot be shaped. This can be shaped. Once you come out, and when you come out, the devil is going to start attacking you very hard. When you decide to not only go to church and do the things that with the label of Christian, but actually truly try to follow Christ, the devil is going to be behind you. And your life is going to be harder, and you're going to face things that you've never faced, and you're going to ask yourself, why is it worth all of that? I'm trying to be good, and everything is setting me back. Yes, because you came out of the ego. The best thing the devil can do is to keep you inside your ego. Because once you're inside your ego, you cannot be changed. You're an easy target. Once you come out, you're flexible. So Christ can change you now. And that's not good for the devil. That's not what he wants. And this is a 3D print of Christ. You come out, and we go on Christ. At the beginning, you look at this, you don't see much. You keep pressing. The pressing is the hands of God, pressing you with hard situations. Sometimes it's hard situations, sometimes it's His grace. And actually, you cannot do it by yourself. Like if you cannot take this and sculpt a Christ out of it. It won't work. You have to go on the mold. This is the original. You cannot make a fake one. You can make a fake Christ, but this is the original. You press yourself against Christ, and all kinds of hard situations will start pressing you against Christ. At the beginning, people will look at you and say, you've changed. Something's changed about you. I don't know what it is. Like, you're not the same. Something's changed. And you yourself start to change. Your priorities in life start to change. What you had on your cover here, your dreams and your hopes and your career and the money and the car, it changes. still there, like, but you're not in the container anymore. You're outside the container now. And you're molding yourself to Christ. You know a good story about someone like that? حد سمع Pope Shenouda when he talked about David, King David? He says something very nice. He says it in Arabic, and I will in Arabic بعدين in English. كان بيقول David, he was this cute guy كده. He's cute. شاب cute كده baby face. شاب cute. فعشان كرايست يعمله ملك كان لازم يديله على دماغه ويخليه مش يديله على دماغه بس put him in tough situations so he toughens up. يخوشن ايوه قولها ايه قولها يخشوشن يخوشن this is what happens, and there is no Christianity without this. There is no true Christianity without this. So if you say, can I be a Christian and not have any troubles in life, and have no trials and have no suffering in my life? No. Not that you're asking for them, not that you want them to happen to you, not that you go looking for them, but chances are, the more you try to conform to Christ, the more of these issues that you're going to face. And you keep pressing, and you see what happens, the more you press, طبعا هنا the plate was a bit thick يعني, I wish it was a bit thinner. But the more you press on the image of Christ itself, if I keep pressing it like longer and longer, طبعا من غير ما تقطع,
You're going to have the image of Jesus.
you'll see that the image of Jesus starts forming on the dough, on the plate. Okay? But the interesting thing about this, the thinner the Play-Doh gets, the more the image of Christ appears. And there's a very famous saying by St. John the Baptist. He said, "For I must decrease and he must increase." And this is exactly what we're trying to do. You are trying to decrease, you are trying to make yourself thinner as a Play-Doh. And the thinner you become, the more Christ appears in you. You know how sometimes when you see a monk or a priest, like Abuna Arsenius, and you see someone kida who is very holy, they don't have to say a word, but when you're sitting with them, you feel an awe. You know what I'm talking about? This is because they've reached this. They have become so thin, like their self becomes almost unseen, and the only thing that is seen is Christ. Some youth might come up to me and say, and actually I had a youth ask me this question. He said, يعني ألغي شخصيتي, يعني I lose my personality, I lose my who I am. The truth is, you don't lose who you are. You're still green. This is still me. When the blue conforms to Christ, it's still going to be blue. So what does that mean, practically speaking? It means that everything that God has given you, instead of channeling all the talents and all your time and all your effort to satisfy whatever is on the label, on the container, you're going to use it for Christ. You're still the same person. When Saint Peter was still Saint Peter after he followed Christ. He was still Saint Peter. He was still a very, مش عايز أقول يعني بس